Today, the Australian share market tumbles as war in the Middle East sends oil prices surging. Mojtaba Khamenei, the second son of the slain Ayatollah, named Iran's new supreme leader. More than 500,000 people displaced in Lebanon as fighting escalates between Israel and Hezbollah fighters. Flood-hit communities in the Northern Territory prepare for more rain after Kathryn experienced its worst deluge in decades. And the Matildas fight back to draw with South Korea, booking a spot in the Asian Cup quarter-final. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Kathryn Robinson. Global markets are beginning to tumble after another intense weekend of war in the Middle East. The Australian Stock Exchange was down nearly 3% at the open this morning and has continued to slide into the red, down nearly 4% a short time ago. The sell-off is occurring as oil prices spike more than 16%, heading towards $110 a barrel. Now that's coming off the recent scenes of oil facilities across the Middle East going up in flames and growing fears of massive disruptions to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The US president has reacted to the surge on Truth Social. He says, quote, short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of Iran nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. He concludes by saying only fools would think it differently. Well, ABC News business editor Michael Yanda is in the studio with me for more on this. Michael, a busy day for markets and investors. Just where are we at with the latest drop in the share market?
Yeah, so we're pretty close to that 4% fall on the ASX 200. A very substantial drop, the biggest one since Donald Trump introduced his so-called Liberation Day tariffs. And we could even get to that level given that the markets kept declining over the course of the morning. Australia's not alone. The Nikkei is also down 6.1% in Japan. So we are seeing some pretty steep falls around the region. Countries like Japan and also areas like Europe are particularly vulnerable to restrictions in energy supplies. Korea also heavily affected by those reductions in oil output from the Middle East. We did see the US markets fall 1.3% on Friday, and the US futures are pointing so far to about a 1.8% decline on the US market when it opens tonight. But the falls in the real Australian market have been much bigger than the futures implied. We've also seen Brent crude oil, as you mentioned, rise by more than 20% at one point, peaking at $111 a barrel, still about 18% higher, close to $109 a barrel. And on the Australian market, almost all of the market is down. 192 of the top 200 stocks were in the red just before midday. Only 7 were higher, and all of those were energy producers. OK, understandably. So why the sell-off? Is this just about the oil crisis, or are there other areas? Look, that is the key driver of this. We've seen a Bloomberg index of commodity prices rise to a peak that's now above the level we saw after Russia invaded Ukraine. So we're starting to see the market price in the risk that energy prices will remain above these $100 a barrel levels. There are some economists warning that if they remain this high persistently for many months, that we could see global growth fall by 0.6% this year compared to what it would be otherwise, and that we could see inflation 1% higher than it otherwise would be without this spike in energy prices. We're already seeing Iraq virtually cease production in its southern oil fields because it can't ship the oil and storage is filling up. And we're seeing the UAE and Kuwait also cut production as their storage facilities fill up. And the longer the Strait of Hormuz is closed, the more energy producers will have to cut back production. We're also seeing some of the major LNG facilities in the region scale back production and prepare to shut down again because they can't ship the output.
You mentioned the impact potentially on inflation there. How could that flow through to rates here?
Yes, well, we've already seen concerns in the US about stagflation. We saw figures out which spooked the market there on Friday about jobs, a fall in US non-farm payrolls and a rise in the unemployment rate. And if you have that lower economic growth and increasing unemployment hitting against rising inflation, it really snookers central banks, not only in the US but potentially here in Australia as well. They can't really cut rates into surging inflation, which is being driven by energy prices, but at the same time their economies may be struggling and hit harder by the rising costs that these energy prices entail.
What are some of the analysts calling on just how far the market could sell off?
It really depends how long the strait is closed for, and that's why comments like Donald Trump's that we heard earlier are really spooking investors, because it doesn't sound like he's backing down. We have seen since the Trump tariffs, the taco trade, Trump always chickens out, but investors seem suddenly to have become spooked that this may not be the case with Iran, that Trump's in it for the long haul, and that the Strait of Hormuz could be closed for many weeks, and facilities in the region could take months, if not longer, to recover to full production.
This is how long is a piece of string question, Michael, but how long could this volatility on the markets last?
It really depends how long the conflict in Iran lasts and how wide it spreads around the region. The real panic is now that we've seen those pictures of oil and gas production facilities being hit, and also the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed because it's now too expensive to ensure any ships transiting through that area. So as long as the strait remains closed, the storage fills up, there's no way to ship oil and gas out, production gets dialed back, and you now get to the point where even if everything resolved, it will take many weeks and potentially months to return to full production, because once you shut down some of these oil fields, and particularly the LNG facilities, you can't just switch them back on overnight.
No. Michael Yander, many thanks.
Thanks, Kath.
Well, the stock market is reflecting fears the war is unlikely to end anytime soon after Iran's state media this morning announced Mojtaba Khamenei as supreme leader to take the place of his late father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
حضرت آیت الله العظما سید مجتبی خامنه‌ای.
The election by Iran's top clerics comes after Israel threatened to kill any chosen successor. Donald Trump says any new leader would not last long without US approval. Meanwhile, the US military has reported its 7th American death, with the war ramping up into its second week. Thick black smoke continues to choke Tehran after Israel attacked major oil facilities. Residents described the night sky turning into day, with plumes of fire lighting up the capital and filling the air with toxic fumes.
Unfortunately, there has been an explosion related to gasoline and oil derivatives, and the area is filled with gasoline, gas, and vapors. The area is incredibly unsafe. It is like a moving bomb.
In return, Iran has widened its retaliation across the Gulf. A government building in Kuwait was struck amid drone attacks, which killed 2 officers. Saudi Arabia has reported its first 2 deaths, saying 2 people were killed by a fallen projectile. The war has seen an escalation in attacks on civilian infrastructure, with Bahrain accusing Iran of damaging a desalination plant, while Iran also says one of its facilities was hit by the US.
The strikes carried out by the Islamic Republic will continue. We will not let them go. They should not think that we will allow the Americans to quickly bring this matter to an end and say we struck them, now let's wrap it up. This can only be wrapped up when they understand they no longer have the right to attack Iran, and when they compensate the Iranian nation for the damages. This disgraceful act they've committed on the international stage carries a heavy cost. They assassinated the leader of Iran. The price for it will not be small.
In Lebanon, the death toll has surged to nearly 400. The Israeli military says 2 of its soldiers have died in clashes with Iran-backed Hezbollah militants in southern Lebanon. More than 500,000 people in Lebanon have been displaced since Israel renewed its offensive.
Today, we are facing a dangerous escalation by the Israelis, with an increased pace of attacks that are particularly targeting civilians, especially children and women. Large-scale massacres are being carried out.
Well, Professor Mehmet Özalp is the head of the Centre for Islamic Studies and Civilization at Charles Sturt University. He joins me now to talk about the installation of the new Supreme Leader. Mehmet, thank you very much for your time.
Hello, Kath. Thanks for having me.
What can you tell us about Mojtaba Khamenei?
Well, he has been a secretive figure operating behind the scenes, mainly using his father's influence, and he was a gatekeeper to his father, which made him a very powerful person, particularly with the Revolutionary Guards, who's there to protect the Islamic regime and the government and the institutions. He had access to and control over the media, which creates the narrative within the Iranian society, and a number of other influences, including the influential clerics in the country. So he was a quiet character, did not have any public office, but has been influential behind the scenes.
What does this appointment represent?
It really represents continuity rather than reform. Mujtaba Khamenei was a safe choice because of his relationships and also knowledge of the system and institutions of the country. He was the best choice. Not if they had someone else, a brand new person, that would mean disruption, especially in this current state of war in Iran. So it represents continuity rather than reform.
Prior to the war, we have seen those huge protests by Iranians. If Mojtaba Khamenei represents continuity, how will the Iranians feel about him?
Well, most Iranians want economic improvement and social improvement as well. That's what they will be focusing on. So they will probably, they were expecting someone like Mujtaba Khamenei to come to power. The person has to be, Supreme Leader has to be an Ayatollah, a religious figure in any case. So the important thing, they will watch and see how he responds to current war and also the economic situation in the country. And then, if they don't like it, we might see some protests.
How do you think the US president will feel about this installation? He's been very vocal about choosing or having a hand at least in the next Iranian leader, Supreme Leader.
I don't think Trump will like it. And Mujtaba Khamenei is a target for United States and Israel at the moment.
How do you think he is likely to engage in this war from a military point of view, from a diplomatic point of view?
We don't know if he's going to be a hands-on leader. His father was not that hands-on, but nevertheless, Supreme Leader holds the key position in the country. All decisions merge in that person. So there is a conventional army in Iran, and then there is the Revolutionary Guards. So Revolutionary Guards, like an umbrella, oversees everything: economic, military and political spheres. So his first priority will be to win the narrative against the United States and win the war by not letting the regime collapse. I think his appointment was a statement by the Iranian government that we are here, we are continuing, and he is the new leader. He's the son of the previous Supreme Leader.
Do you expect there to be any change from the viewpoint of dialogue and diplomacy and negotiating and getting back to the table?
I don't think it will happen during the war, but it may happen after the war. He is 56 years old, relatively younger person. We don't know his character. He's been an elusive figure, so it's going to be watch and see.
And what are your final thoughts, your conclusions around this appointment, Mehmet?
Well, it was a dynastic it gives that impression. He's the son of the previous Supreme Leader. The Islamic Revolution came saying that Iranians deserve better than a dynasty, a monarchy, but we are now seeing the opposite of that. So it does put a legitimacy question to his appointment.
Professor Mehmet Özalp, head of the Centre for Islamic Studies and Civilization at Charles Sturt University, many thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, Nationals leader David Littleproud has accused big fuel companies of leaving some farmers without access in a bid to shore up supply for service stations amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Fuel wholesalers have reportedly begun rationing petrol and diesel supplies, leading to concerns about high prices and shortages. For more on this, political reporter Romy Stevens joins us now from Parliament House. Good afternoon to you, Romy. Just how are farmers being impacted?
Yeah, so Kath, typically when everyday motorists such as myself need to refuel, we head to the petrol station to do so. But for farmers, it's a bit of a different story given the large-scale machinery that they need to run and therefore the larger quantities of fuel that they need, and in particularly diesel. They rely on distributors to go pick up that fuel and take it to their farms. But those distributors are facing shortages amid reports that big fuel companies such as United Petroleum are rationing fuel given the ongoing unrest in the Middle East, and particularly the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which typically sees about 20% of the world's oil supply pass through. Now, Nationals leader David Littleproud says that as a result of this, there are stories of farmers not having any fuel left in their tanks, and therefore they can't operate their tractors in order to produce food and fibre for the country. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
The big four servos and fuel companies in this country control about 80% of the market, and they're holding back supply to these smaller wholesalers. They've got the supply, but what they're doing is they're hedging against a future price shock where they could get caught with fuel that they paid more for than what they can get. And so it's a commercial decision that they're making, but it has a real impact on our food security and our supply chain.
Now, David Littleproud also says that it's up to the federal government and the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission to ensure that supply is unlocked for distributors to help those farmers.
So, Romy, how has the federal government responded?
Yeah, so the federal government has repeatedly been saying in recent days that people shouldn't panic buy when it comes to fuel, and been talking up Australia's supply fuel reserves rather. But we are hearing stories and reports that there are some farmers who are panic buying after being caught up in this. Now, the Energy Minister Chris Bowen last week gave us a bit of an insight into the country's strategic reserve, saying that it stands at 36 days of petrol and 34 days of diesel. Now, it's important to note that that is in a worst case scenario, those reserves. So if we do stop seeing supply coming into Australia, that's what that is there for. And whilst these numbers are the highest that they have been in about 15 years, they still fall short of the 90-day recommendation for the reserve by the International Energy Agency guidelines. Now, Labor frontbencher Kathryn has spoken about this earlier, and she says that the government has done a lot of work to bolster our fuel reserves. Let's take a listen.
Because of the work of this government, and particularly Minister Bowen, we've got 2 refineries that are open. We've got fuel supplies here in Australia, not sitting over in Texas as they were under the previous government. We are much more resilient than we were in previous years when it comes to fuel security.
Now, there are a lot of concerns here from the agricultural industry with the cropping season about to start in many regions. So not only are these farmers facing potential fuel shortages when they really need a lot of fuel to be able to run that large-scale machinery, but they're also facing some challenges when it comes to fertiliser prices, given that much of the fertiliser industry here in Australia relies on suppliers from the Middle East. Kath?
Romy, thank you. Well, uncertainty surrounds the future of the Iranian women's soccer team, who are due to leave Australia after winding up their Asian Cup campaign. The women could face persecution upon their return to the war-torn country after they refused to sing the national anthem ahead of their first game. National Sport reporter David Mark has been following the story and is with me now. David, what do we know about the situation?
Kathryn, it's a really movable feast at the moment. As you just said, the Iranian women's team have finished their Asian Cup campaign. They played last night on the Gold Coast. They lost 2-0 to the Philippines. As they left the stadium, their bus was surrounded by supporters who were pounding on the bus and making heart symbols and so on and chanting "Save our girls." They followed that bus for quite some time. The players are now in their Gold Coast hotel, so obviously there are about 100, 200 supporters there who are demanding that the women get released. Now, we haven't heard from the women really at any time during this tournament, apart from the odd press conference where they answered one or two questions, but were very vague in their answers. We understand that they've been very, very, very heavily chaperoned, and they haven't had essentially any outside contact with the world apart from those one or two press conferences, and they've been tightly contained. So the team was due to go back to Iran. There is a petition that's been going around demanding they be granted asylum. As of last night, they had 46,000 signatures. We don't know what the players want at this stage. We do know that there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes. So FIFPro, which is the International Players Union, essentially is working on the case. It's liaising with the Asian Football Confederation. The AFC essentially has carriage of the players now. It's responsible for them. The federal government is monitoring the situation and trying to work on what can happen next. Sorry, go on.
Well, yeah, what are some of the options? I mean, is it a possibility that they stay here, return home, or go elsewhere?
So it's a very invidious situation for the players. They're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they seek asylum, there are questions about, well, how do they seek asylum? How do they actually make that request to the federal government? Michelle Rowland, who's the Attorney General today, said those scenes we just saw was a poignant moment, but she's very limited in comments that she makes. So the question then is, how do they actually seek asylum? If they do, what happens to their family members back in Iran? And remember, the problem was that they refused to sing the national anthem during their first game, and they were dubbed as traitors on national television. So they potentially could face jail, imprisonment, perhaps even death. That's been suggested. If they go back, what happens to them if they go back? And then how do they get back? There's obviously no direct flights to Iran, so they'd have to fly to a third country and perhaps bus in. So it's a very dangerous situation no matter what situation they're in. At the moment, we know they're in the hotel on the Gold Coast. We understand that the AFC, the Asian Football Confederation, is working to try to make them safe and perhaps stay there for as long as it takes for a resolution to this situation to be worked out.
So it's an unknown as to how long they might be here and what the next steps might be, how long they can negotiate or try to find a solution that is appropriate.
Correct. And we just don't know how long that is. I mean, we understood initially that they were due to fly back quite early this week, but we just don't know what the situation is now. Obviously, we want to be able to report that, but I don't think anyone knows. All we can really say is there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes to try to resolve the situation, to try to get some communication with those players, to try to ascertain what it is exactly that they want to do next.
David and Mark, many thanks.
Thanks, Kathryn.
A 41-year-old man has been charged with murder over a fatal stabbing in Sydney's Inner West. Reporter Molly Slattery has more.
Emergency services were called to the home on Spring Street in Concord just after midday on Sunday. They were conducting a welfare check when they located a 37-year-old man with a stab wound to his chest. Now, emergency services provided CPR to that man, but he was unable to be revived. Now, since then, police say they've identified what they believe to be the alleged murder weapon, a kitchen knife found in that property. Now, since then, a 41-year-old man who lived at that home has been charged with one count of murder. He was remanded in custody overnight and is due to face the Burwood local court today. Now, police say there was also another man home at that time, and there are plenty of questions around the relationship between these three men. Police say it appears that the man now in custody and another person living at that home are in a relationship, and they have a long-standing friendship with this alleged murder victim. Now, police say there's still plenty of questions surrounding this case. At this stage, they have ruled out considering this as a domestic violence incident, but certainly more to come, and we'll hear more from police later today.
Well, thousands of homes in the Northern Territory are still without power and hundreds are without working sewage following widespread flooding. A number of schools in Kathryn and remote communities also remain closed. For more on the situation in the top end, here's reporter James Elton.
Well, the Kathryn River is receding today after having reached its peak of more than 19 metres on Saturday night. As of Monday morning, it was about 17.3 and continuing to fall, and large parts of the Kathryn Township are now accessible again. Parts of Kathryn South and Kathryn North that were underwater as recently as yesterday are starting to become accessible by road again. Although the road situation is a constantly evolving thing, so people are urged to check the NT Road Report for the latest information. The other things that people need to know if they're in the Kathryn area is that a boiled water alert remains in place for both Kathryn and for the nearby community of Woogala, also known as Beswick. So people should be boiling water if they want to drink it, use it in their cooking or use it to make infant formula. Schools in the Kathryn area remain closed, and that's largely because many of them are still being used as evacuation centres in Kathryn East. For those people who are still wanting to make their way to an evacuation shelter, those are open, and people are just urged to bring their own bedding and their own food if they want to go to an evacuation centre. No cooking is allowed at the evac centres, so it's best to bring stuff that you don't need to heat up, you don't need to cook. Authorities are working as fast as they can to get the Kathryn CBD and essential services back up and running and back to normal. Their priorities are getting the Kathryn Hospital back up and running, and then it will turn to things like essential government buildings and getting the main shops, the local Woolworths, to be open again as Kathryn now enters its 4th day of this flood emergency.
An emergency alert has been issued for Queensland's Central Highlands after heavy rain overnight. Residents in the area are being urged to move to higher ground. 2 watch and act alerts have also been issued for parts of the Western Downs, with locals being told to monitor conditions. The Queensland Premier, David Crisafulli, is asking people affected by floodwaters to try and stay out of harm's way.
People should know that the impact it puts on their own family and the own personal strain in their community, but also think about it through the eyes of those emergency services personnel. They've got loved ones too, and anything you can do to stay out of harm's way helps everyone. And I'm really grateful for the effort of the men and women of things like those swiftwater rescue teams, the police, the SES, the fireys, right across the board, and I want to thank them for their service. And in testing times, they prove their value as great Queenslanders, and we should be so proud to call them their own.
The Victorian Government says it will begin charging people a fee to visit the 12 Apostles on the Great Ocean Road. The government says the money will be spent on maintaining the natural landmark, with consultation on how much to charge visitors set to commence today. Steph Ferrier reports.
The state government says it's consulting with stakeholders, including local councils, businesses and also the Indigenous community in the state's southwest, to decide exactly how much to charge visitors to see the 12 Apostles. And this entry fee will be enforced by the end of the year, so the upcoming summer season, and also to coincide with the opening of a new visitor experience centre there. The government is also going to introduce a new booking system to more closely manage visitor and car parking numbers, and that's because the 12 Apostles sees around 2 million visitors there to the site, which is about a 4-hour drive from Melbourne every year. Locals will not be charged this new fee, but the Environment Minister, Steve Dimopoulos, says it's fair that other visitors do pay this fee to help pay for beach access and improving local amenities, as well as maintaining this national landmark. And he says that it's very similar to the fee already charged at other landmark sites around Australia, including the Uluru National Park and also the Mount Kosciuszko National Park.
Steph Ferrier reporting there. It's time to check the weather now with Lillian Rangiah.
Major flooding is expected for rivers in Queensland and the NT today, so please keep an eye out on the warnings. We've got a trough dragging moisture in Queensland slowly towards the coast, while in the NT a low is dumping rain. Meanwhile, we do have high fire danger in parts of the south. My focus is on the north, though, where we're likely to see more heavy falls through the day. Now, hopefully, southeast Queensland could get a little bit of a break as some of the rain heads over water overnight. We are looking at some potentially high totals, particularly over the Gulf, with that rain sticking around in the north. Now, tomorrow does look a little clearer, though. Brisbane, just a shower or two, heading towards 29 degrees. Sydney, possibly a few drops, reaching 27. Canberra, sunny, heading towards 29. Melbourne, cloud clearing, heading to 29 there too. Hobart looks fine, heading to 25 degrees. Adelaide, sunny, 32 the maximum tomorrow. Perth looks clear, reaching a top of 30 degrees. And Darwin, showers easing tomorrow, heading towards 30 degrees there too.
This is ABC News. Our top stories this hour. Iran has named Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's second son as the country's new supreme leader. It gives Mojtaba Khamenei the final say in all matters of the state in the Islamic Republic. But US President Trump has previously called him an unacceptable choice and warned of any new leader would not last without his approval. The Australian share market has suffered sharp falls in early trade today, with investors spooked by the soaring price of Brent crude. Almost all stocks in the ASX top 20 opened in the red. The war in the Middle East is likely to lead to even higher oil prices amid fears oil production is being targeted. Flood-hit communities in the Northern Territory are preparing for more rain after parts of Kathryn were inundated at the weekend. Authorities say river levels have stabilised for now, but major flooding is still present. It's the worst flooding for Kathryn in nearly 3 decades. And the Matildas say they're encouraged by their finish to the final group stage of the Women's Asian Cup. A late goal to Alana Kennedy ensured a 3-all draw with South Korea, meaning Australia will now travel to Perth for the quarter-final on Friday night. They'll face either North Korea or China, both of whom are giants of women's football. Well, there's no end in sight to the war in the Middle East, which is now into its second week. Gemma Vaness explains how the conflict has spread beyond Iran's borders.
The first attacks on Iran by Israel were described as preemptive strikes. The US quickly confirmed it joined the campaign. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's compound was among the targets. His location at the time was unknown, but it was confirmed later that the supreme leader had been killed. In the hours that followed, air raid sirens sounded across Israel as Iran began the start of widespread retaliatory attacks. US President Donald Trump had long been threatening action against Tehran. Just a day before the initial strikes, both sides held nuclear talks through a mediator. Those discussions were set to continue until the war broke out. There had been clear signs Washington was preparing an attack on Iran, including a massive build-up of US firepower in the Middle East. Around an hour after the initial strikes, Donald Trump announced major combat operations were underway, and he also called for an uprising in Iran. He indicated the war could continue for 4 to 6 weeks.
I once again urge the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military, police, to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death. It will be certain death. Won't be pretty.
There have been more than 2,000 Israeli and US strikes on Iran, hitting locations across the country. The US has used bunker buster bombs to target underground locations. Hundreds of strikes were conducted in the first few hours of the war. Human rights activists say more than 1,300 civilians have been killed, including almost 200 at a school in the coastal city of Minab. Iran's retaliation has been widespread. Some of the first places hit after the initial attacks were Bahrain and Kuwait, which both house US military bases. 3 American troops were killed at the US embassy in Kuwait, the first US fatalities in the conflict. And at least 10 people have died in attacks in Israel, with civilian targets among those hit. In the days that followed, Iranian-backed militia groups began taking part in retaliatory strikes. Now, around the same time, Israel launched a wave of attacks on southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. The militant group is largely funded and directed by Iran's strict theocratic Islamist regime. And it controls large parts of Lebanon, areas that function as states within a state. Inside, it runs everything from education and healthcare to security affairs. Dubai's international airport was significantly damaged in an attack, with many airports in the region still closed or running limited operations more than a week on from the start of this conflict. Travel disruption has been widespread, with flights grounded in many countries. Hundreds of Australians have returned on repatriation flights after becoming stranded. The flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz has effectively stopped. Iran has threatened to target any vessel passing through the strait, shutting off access to around 20% of the world's oil. Multiple ships have been attacked. The conflict widened beyond the Middle East after the United Kingdom gave the US permission to use its Air Force base in Cyprus. An Iranian drone hit the base, causing only minor damage and no casualties or injuries. A day later, 2 more drones were intercepted. And a US submarine used a torpedo to strike an Iranian ship in international waters off the coast of Sri Lanka. And more than 80 Iranian sailors were killed. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese confirmed 3 Australians were on board the US submarine at the time of the attack, taking part in AUKUS training. That same day, NATO defence systems were used for the first time in the conflict after a missile entered Turkey's airspace. Azerbaijan has also been brought into the conflict. It has accused Iran of firing 2 drones at its territory. That action prompted the closure of airspace in the country's south for more than 12 hours. Australia is now considering a request for assistance sent by countries in the Gulf which have come under Iranian attack. As the strikes continue, there is still no clear end in sight to the war.
Iran still has missiles and UAVs and capabilities to hit the Gulf, but also the global economy. The Americans are betting on their capacity to destroy the Iranian offensive capabilities before they can enact. And ultimately, it'll be that balance between how much do the Iranians still have to hurt others and how much can the Americans forestall that will decide more or less the outcome of this war.
Well, widespread internet blackouts are hampering the ability of Iranians to contact the outside world. But Iranian journalists in London continue to broadcast news into the country from afar. Europe correspondent Kathryn reports.
Living in exile, these Iranian journalists beam news back to their people still living inside Tehran's repressive regime. Fariba Shirazi was the one who broke the news of the US-Israeli strikes to her viewers.
I was shocked, full of emotion, so much happiness and at the same time so much tears.
In 2017, Iran International established its first newsroom in London, employing hundreds of journalists who'd fled Iran for their own safety. Executive news editor Ali Ashgar Ramanzapur compares the death of Iran's supreme leader to the fall of the Soviet Union.
It was huge. I couldn't believe it.
Do you think that the death of Ayatollah Khamenei will lead to regime change?
There is no sign of recovery. They have lost the influence and power inside Iran. This situation, I think it can't last more than a few weeks.
While the death of Ayatollah Khamenei has reduced the risk faced by journalists here, it's by no means removed it. The regime is yet to topple and its tentacles reach far and wide, including to here in the United Kingdom.
As the regime is on its last legs, it will lash out because they'll feel that they have nothing to lose. It's not going to be a rational calculation.
As these journalists continue to report on this widening war, many have no idea if their loved ones are safe.
I haven't heard from my sisters or my mom, and I'm so concerned about that.
For those in exile, Iran isn't yet an option. They're hoping if the regime falls, they might finally be able to return home. Kathryn, ABC News, London.
Well, 3 more remote communities in the Northern Territory have been evacuated following heavy rain, and the Bureau of Meteorology is warning a monsoonal trough could bring more rain to areas that are already saturated. A large-scale emergency response was triggered over the weekend. The Kathryn River peaked at 19.2 metres, its highest level in 28 years. It's now receding, but around 1,000 properties in Kathryn are without power and 450 without working sewage. Kathryn's hospital remains shut with all patients evacuated, including 20 pregnant women. A number of schools in Kathryn and remote communities also remain closed.
I know that people have had issues. I've heard the feedback around Kathryn. I was out yesterday. I have heard what people have said, and we will certainly be looking at this once we get through the clean-up. We are aware that you are keen to get home, you're keen to get things cleaned up, you're keen to get your life back to the way it was, and we are doing everything we can to make that happen as quickly as possible, but we also need to do it safely and we need to do it in an orderly way.
A monsoonal trough will continue dumping rain across parts of the top end. It's expected to move across the region this afternoon. The Bureau of Meteorology say it could lead to isolated totals in excess of 100 millimetres. Well, Carney Ganley owns a bush retreat that sits on top of a hill about 16 kilometres out of the town centre of Kathryn. He's been cut off for about 3 days now and joins me now. Carney, welcome.
G'day, Kathryn. How are you today?
Yeah, look, I'm well. I think I'm a bit better than you are at the moment. You've been isolated for 3 days. How are you coping?
Oh, well, I'm lucky I've got a generator. So we've got water and we've been able to keep the refrigeration going to keep the food up. So we've been pretty lucky. There's a lot of others who don't have what we've got. So that's good.
OK. Did it catch you by surprise?
Yeah, a little bit. I heard that there was going to be some rain out to the southeast of us and that maybe some of the communities like Jukmingan and Beswick were going to be affected. But I had no idea. I don't think a lot of people had any idea that it was going to affect us here in Kathryn as big as it did.
So what assistance have you received so far? You've obviously got to stay put because you are isolated.
Oh, we haven't received any assistance, but that's not because we were calling out we needed it. We are pretty self-sufficient in here. There's a lot of people in town that need a lot more than us. We didn't really know about it. I sent the kids to school on Friday morning. At about 8 o'clock, I got a call from a mate saying a job that we were going to do had been cancelled because of the flooding. I was like, what flooding?
Right.
So I had to quickly call my kids to get them to turn around and come home because of the creeks between Kathryn and here. So we drove into town to have a look. It looked like it was okay, but it was going to rise. We went to Woolies and that was out of control. So we grabbed as much as we could and jumped back in the car. It took us about an hour. By the time we got home, the river, the water had crossed the road by about 1.2 metres at a 2 Mile Creek and about a metre at Bullocky Creek, just on the outside of town. OK, you sound pretty plugged into the community there. What are people in the town telling you? Well, a lot of people caught unawares as well. A lot of people were at Woolies. That was the big thing. I think a lot of people have been very grateful for a couple of people. I mean, the community has really come together. A couple of people I'd shout out to would be Trent from Rod and Rifle, who's been keeping basically the world updated with his posts from the centre of Kathryn, riding his bike around at all time of the night and day, just keeping everyone updated about what's the status of the water. Another one would be Dave from Kathryn Coaches, or the Boaty Bus, driving his truck around, delivering sandbags and evacuating people from low-lying areas in Kathryn South. So there's been lots of other people that have come together to help out, but they're just two that I'm throwing out there for doing a great job. And that's often the silver lining for when natural disasters hit. The communities and tightly knit ones often come together so well. Have you we know that Kathryn has experienced flooding before, back in the early 2000s, 2003 and 98, I think it was. Did you live through those? So I was a tour guide for a long time, and I had 20 backpackers in a coaster bus here in Kathryn in 98. I was standing at the park next to the bridge watching the water hit the bridge and thought, oh, this is going to go. Yeah. And so I grabbed my backpackers, chucked them in the bus. The police had abandoned the roadblock going south, and so I just kept driving with my backpackers, got all the way to Mataranka. By the time I got to Mataranka, there was a police roadblock stopping anyone going north, and they were like, how'd you get here? Sounds like you're the tour guide everyone needs in an emergency. Kathy, we know that the water is receding now. Do you have any idea when you'll be connected back to the town? So I drove down to not quite Bullock Creek, 2 Mile Creek, and it was below the level of the bridge, so it was below a metre over the bridge. When I drove out on Friday, I drove through that bridge at 1.2, so it is possible. However, I don't know what the status of the road is underneath, and it's not worth driving in over it at the moment until we can establish that there's actually a road where the bridge used to be.
Given that you experienced 98 and I presume 03 and now this one, what is Kathryn going to need when the clean-up begins?
Well, lots of things, I suppose. I mean, food security is the main thing. I think Woolies is... I don't know enough about it, how it is at the moment, but I heard Woolies is doing okay. But Woolworths in Kathryn is the only supermarket for, like, thousands of kilometres. It's the only supermarket between Darwin and Alice Springs, Queensland and Western Australia. So that's a big area. It doesn't just service the people of Kathryn, it services the people for thousands and thousands of kilometres. So as long as we've got food and the trucks and the train can get through to us and to Darwin, I think the community should come together. I mean, a lot of people are going to be fixing houses and the roads are going to need a lot of work. There's a lot of potholes, a lot of bitumen been washed out. So, yeah, they're the sorts of things that I can think of off the top of my head that we're going to need straight away.
Yeah, a lot of mud as well, and cleaning up. The Mud Army always helps with something like that. Just briefly, Carney, before I let you go, the Bureau of Meteorology is warning of a monsoonal trough that could bring more rain to certain areas. Do you know if Kathryn is going to be hit?
I don't know. It rained all night here last night. And then just as I was setting up to talk to you, we started getting a few drops and started panicking. Where are we going to go if we have to move? So it's sort of stopped. It's pretty grey out here at the moment. But I don't know. I mean, I think we'll be okay. As long as the river keeps going down. Maud Creek is the major watercourse between us and the gorge, and that's dropped from like 8 metres or so down to about 3.5 metres since yesterday.
Well, Carney, we wish you all the very best and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much. You have a great day and good luck to everyone in Kathryn.
Yeah, you keep up the spirit. Carney Ganley there, owner of the Gorge View Bush Retreat in Kathryn. Well, a new online calculator has been developed to help Australian women consider their choices when it comes to freezing their eggs. The independent calculator is designed to provide clear and realistic expectations. The University of New South Wales Professor Georgina Chambers is leading the developers and she's with me now. Good afternoon to you, Professor. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Just how was this new calculator developed?
Well, we used all the IVF data that it's collected from every IVF clinic in Australia to develop the estimator. Every IVF clinic provides their data to the University of New South Wales as part of their licensing requirements, and we use that data to produce this calculator. So it represents a very broad range of outcomes for people who are considering freezing their eggs.
And so how does it work? What sort of numbers is it calculating, Georgina?
So it's quite simple in terms of what a woman has to do to get an estimate of her chances of having IVF success using frozen eggs. She enters her age and the number of cycles she's anticipating to do, and then she'll get a breakdown of the number of eggs she can expect to be collected through to number that will be frozen, fertilised, the number of transferable embryos, and then her chances of success from those frozen eggs if she chooses to come back and use them.
Why did you and your team think that there was a need for something like this?
Well, we know that the number of women and that are and people that are searching for information on egg freezing has grown exponentially over the years. And this is reflected in the number of egg freezing cycles that have been performed, which has tripled over the last 3 reporting years. And we know that for every person that decides to freeze their eggs, there's probably 10 more that are searching for information. So the government funded us to develop this estimator, which is part of the Your IVF Success website that's on the screen now.
We know that it can cost a lot of money, between $8,000 to $11,000 for the freezing of the eggs. What are the main misconceptions that women face when they're looking at going down this path of freezing their eggs? Because it's obviously a very emotional one and it's a very expensive one.
True. I think one of the main misconceptions is the chances of success from egg freezing. We are getting the message out there now that a woman's fertility declines with age, but I think where there's still a gap is in terms of the chances of success from IVF. So, for example, many women think that if I have 10 eggs frozen, that means I've got 10 eggs in the freezer. 10 babies in the freezer. But that's not true. So the average age of women freezing their eggs in Australia is about 35 at the moment. And if on average they do one cycle, that's 9 eggs frozen. But that only gives them a 53% chance of a baby from those eggs.
Do you think that some clinics overpromise and underdeliver?
Look, I can't really answer that. I'm not sure whether that's the case or not. But what I do know is that people really value the Your IVF Success website because it's government funded and it's independent. It's based on data from every IVF clinic, and the calculations and the estimations are by independent academics at the University of New South Wales. And women, we know, really value that. 90% of people that visit our website value it because it's government backed and it's independent.
Really great to speak with you on this new calculator. The University of New South Wales Professor Georgina Chambers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Perth woman Deirdre Croft has dedicated 45 years to caring for and advocating for her intellectually disabled son. Much of that work has been captured on film in multiple documentaries about their lives. Now, aged 72, Deirdre has invited the cameras in again, this time as her health declines. She's on a mission to create a network of people to care for her son after she's gone.
If we do a selfie, Richard.
My son, Richard, is totally dependent on other people to help him engage with this world and to make sure he survives.
But isn't that fascinating? That handsome.
Sometimes I actually feel that Richard is my therapist. He knows nothing about world politics. He has no ego. He doesn't judge me. It's quite liberating. It's hold my hand and let's play a song together.
Happy day to you.
Deirdre loves and loved Richard from the minute he was born. She has given him her all, everything.
Richard?
I think Deirdre is much frailer than she was.
I want to thank you for all you've contributed in 45 years on planet Earth.
I think she's been preparing for her death from day one with Richard. And so the pressure is now on Deirdre to work out who's going to look after Richard from this point on.
My only concern is Richard's future. I feel like there's no time to be wasted.
And you can see Deirdre and Richard's Australian story tonight at 8 p.m. on ABC TV and stream anytime on ABC iView. Time now for the day's sports news. I'm joined in the studio with Daniela Intili. Danny, there's some big news involving Zach Lomax.
Zach Lomax, Kath, has signed with Rugby Australia and the Western Force. It's going to be a 2-year deal, and it just follows the saga last week with the Parramatta Eels and the Melbourne Storm. He had wanted to sign with the Melbourne Storm after the R360. The prospect had failed. That was stopped by the Eels in court, who said that that wasn't allowed to happen. But he'll now be playing with the Western Force, and that means he's got the possibility of representing the Wallabies at the 2027 Rugby World Cup.
OK, and the Matildas, everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people caught the game, but they're off to Perth.
They are in Perth. Unfortunately, the 3-3 draw, they had to win to stay in Sydney. The draw means that they do have to head to Perth, and that travel will cause just a bit more work for the Matildas, as well as who their opponent is going to be, which is going to be quite either China or North Korea, and that in itself will be hard. So disappointment for the Tillies that they couldn't get the win. And Joe Montemurro, if you heard him speaking yesterday, he was not happy at all. But Ellie Carpenter, she was at the airport this morning, and this is what she had to say.
Yeah, we're obviously disappointed, but I think the positive we can take is we didn't lose. I think that attitude of getting that goal back at the end is what this team is about. Obviously not the route we wanted to go down, but that's football, that's tournament football. Our focus is turned now to this game.
So, Danny, Australia has claimed its first medal at the Paralympic Games in Italy.
Oh, Ben Tudhope, he's an absolute sweetheart if you ever get to meet him. Just such a charismatic, lovely person, but a terrific athlete, more importantly. This is his 4th Games. He has taken silver in the men's snowboard cross LL2 event behind Italy's Emanuele Peratona. So this is his 4th Games. He was the flag bearer as well. And he managed to get this silver, Kath, even though he dislocated his shoulder during his quarter-final of this event.
Yeah, OK, yeah, great role model as well. Let's go to Melbourne, Albert Park, the disaster that befell Oscar Piastri. I couldn't believe it watching it.
Literally a car crash, wasn't it? Heartbreaking for Oscar. There'd been a new stand named after him. We know how heartbreaking, how disappointed he was. He apologised to the fans. There are all these new rules and regulations with the F1, as well as just changes with the cars. A lot of drivers are adjusting to that. Several did not finish this race, but for Oscar, the 2nd year in a row where there has been heartache at the AusGP. He looked set to win it last year and crashed out. And Travis Auld, the Australian Grand Prix CEO, had a little bit to say about Oscar this morning.
Yeah, I feel really sorry for Oscar. He has huge expectations leading into this race. First time with his own grandstand, and so he would feel as bad as anyone, I'm sure, this morning. In saying that, new cars, new regulations, there's 5 cars that didn't finish the race. There's 2 that didn't start. So he's not on his own, and I think it'll be like this for a few weeks while they work these new cars out.
To the cricket now, and in men's cricket, India has won back-to-back 2020 World Cups.
Yeah, the first nation to win back-to-back T20 men's World Cups, and a record 3rd time for India, beating New Zealand in the final quite convincingly, 96 runs in Ahmedabad. Wicketkeeper Sanju Samson, he led the way, hitting 89 off 46 balls as India reached 5 for 255. New Zealand struggling in the chase, all out for 159. Jasprit Bumrah taking 4 for 15.
And staying with cricket, but the women's cricket captain, Alyssa Healy, finally bows out of international fixtures.
Yeah, and Midge bowing out on a high with her team, claiming a convincing win against India, a 10-wicket victory in that test. That seals a 12-4 victory in the multi-format series. So how good to have her teammates carry her on her shoulders as well.
And what an illustrious career. Danny, thank you so much. And there's more on the ABC News app and, of course, on ABC iView. I'm Kathryn Robinson. Thanks for your company this last hour. There'll be more news on the ABC News channel at 1 o'clock.